Hello, this is Gabriela Alcantara-Diaz, and I've got my co-host, Frank Carbajal, and we are here with our second episode of Latin Wealth Builders, a podcast that really speaks to the increasing multi-generational wealth that we're seeing among Hispanics. And we have our guest speaker today, Ana Gabriela Urizar. And I'd like to pass on the microphone to Frank before we start our session, but to really just emphasize the fact that, these are very difficult times for a lot of us in our Hispanic communities. And we know that one of the avenues that Hispanics use to generate generational wealth, multi-generational wealth, is through entrepreneurship. So understanding the labor force, what the implications are critical right now to the marketplace. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Frank.
Gracias, Gabriela and Ana. It's a pleasure to be here today on this Monday. I just want to say that I'm grateful to be your co-host. And immigration to me is very important because my parents, immigrants from Mexico, and your journey, Gabriela from Uruguay and Ana from Guatemala, it's important. And one of the things that's important for me personally is the fact that I like to say under attack because it is serious and it's a time where we need folks like Ana to really go over the issues. And we'll ask her a question in Spanish as well to address, more importantly, the audience and the audience that will be listening into our show here, because what's most important is using this platform as a resource. And so with that, Gabriela, I will have you ask the first question to our guests today.
Perfect. And as we know, this is basically just information that we're sharing. By no means is this something that you have to activate or legal advice. Then you can speak to Ana directly in her forum. This is really just providing resources for the marketplace. And I think to put things in perspective is, in evaluating our scenario is that we know that about 7% of the current employer base businesses are Hispanic. So with that, we understand that a large share of that labor pool, really, you've got a larger share of immigrants. So when we think about that 7%, we know that it's led by California, followed by Florida, and followed by Texas. And we know that the majority of those businesses come from the construction sector, followed by hospitality. And then we've got the STEM and other technology, IT, which Ana is very involved with. So when we think of Ana from a labor perspective, we know that we've got the employer base. So we're looking at Hispanic business owners that have a majority of their employees may be immigrants. And if they're in construction, what are some of the issues that they should be evaluating right now with their labor force?
So in terms of the industries that you mentioned, you are right. These are actually considered industry at high risks, which are agriculture, construction, food services, which we know are largely have a huge impact on Latino business owners. So in terms of my recommendation for Latino business owners within these industries is to really pay attention on their I-9s. We're going to see an increase on I-9 audits, to review their policies and procedures, to also provide training and equip their HR teams with the knowledge to complete these I-9s, to evaluate that their electronic systems are in compliance with immigration is very important. We're also expecting to see a heightened scrutiny in terms of site visits, which is what we saw during the first 4 years of the Trump administration, where immigration officers are going to show up to these different sites and conduct compliance audits.
Okay. And Frank, what questions would you like to address right now with Ana as well?
Yeah, Ana. So one of the things some of the things that we have to try to stay away from is listening to the news on a daily basis. But as Latinos, it's hard to do because, as I mentioned, the word under attack, it's really serious time where I was just looking at, the huge demographic in terms of New York City and the immigrants that are hardworking. And when we speak of vendors and we speak of fear, what are some of the things that you're doing personally to alleviate some of those fears, making sure that we could live a daily life in terms of protecting and proteger. You could please address it in Spanish, protecting our community de miedo, de este país que...
Aparte de mi trabajo, yo me especializo en inmigración corporativa, pero aparte de mi trabajo de día a día, he estado trabajando, haciendo trabajo pro bono o gratuito para la comunidad y he estado
Sí.
trabajando con organizaciones sin fines de lucro y que defienden los derechos de los inmigrantes. Una de las recomendaciones que hemos estado dando a las personas y al pueblo inmigrante es que por favor acudan con un abogado de inmigración. A veces las personas piensan que no tienen tal vez el dinero para pagar un abogado, pero hay muchas organizaciones que no cobran, especialmente en ciudades grandes como Nueva York, Chicago, Los Ángeles, Houston, que se acerquen a estas organizaciones. Todo lo que ustedes le digan a estos abogados es privado, no pueden compartirlo con nadie. A veces las personas no saben, pero hay avenidas migratorias por las cuales pueden calificar. Ese es uno de los primeros consejos que estamos dando, acudir a un abogado de inmigración, asesorar su caso. También es muy importante no creer todo lo que la gente está viendo en cadenas de Facebook o en cadenas de WhatsApp o rumores. Por eso es importante acudir a una fuente que sea verídica. Otra recomendación que estamos dando es que tengan un plan de emergencia, que tengan a alguien de confianza, un familiar o un amigo que pueda cuidar a sus hijos en caso que sean deportados, y también tener un plan de emergencia, tener documentos listos, tener medicinas. Y otra recomendación que los consulados de diferentes países, especialmente de Latinoamérica, están dando es que registren a los hijos con la ciudadanía del país de los padres. Por ejemplo, yo he estado colaborando con el Consulado de Guatemala, donde se les está brindando la oportunidad a los inmigrantes guatemaltecos de traer a sus hijos ciudadanos americanos a registrarse, sacar el pasaporte y la ciudadanía guatemalteca, porque en dado caso que deportaran a ambos padres, si el niño no tiene la ciudadanía guatemalteca o de otro país latinoamericano, es muy difícil que el consulado intervenga y ayude a la reunificación del niño con los padres en otro país porque es un ciudadano americano. Son una de las recomendaciones que hemos estado dando.
That's really critical, and I'm going to just go back to English for some of the audience that may only speak English, or is when you think of the consulate, it's a resource, and I mean, I was born in Uruguay, and I'm a U.S. citizen, and I actually have dual citizenship. My daughter's now getting hers, and she's an American citizen. We're looking at our Spanish citizen, but it's interesting to understand that it can also be a default and allow for those children to have sort of that dual citizenship in case of these situations. Another thing too is when we think of the food service, right, and we have hospitality, and again, when we think of in the Hispanic market, you've got sort of these mixed marriages, right? Where you could have one that is a U.S. American citizen, maybe someone has a residency, or, they're sort of mixed. And let's say you've had a restaurant for 10 years and it's, you've got your labor force, but then you yourself, maybe they're family members that may not necessarily be U.S. citizens. It's like, it's such a, food, right? The food industry is so big in our markets. And again, it's not only just the mom and pop little cafeteria. You could also have restaurants that are full blown, restaurants that can occupy, you can have, 50 people sitting in that restaurant. So it's not as just this immediate immigrant. Can you speak a little bit to that and the dynamics that exist in that industry per se?
Yes, of course. Then in terms of the food industry, what we're seeing as well, like you said, is a mix of immigration status. We are even seeing Latino business owners that are undocumented. For them, some of the recommendations that we're seeing, and of course, it's crucial that they go to a business attorney that can advise them on corporations and legality of that. But some of the recommendations that we're seeing is having the Latino business owners that don't have documents or are at risk of deportation create a power of attorney and designate as well a person of trust that person can run the business, can access the bank accounts, can pay the people, and can run the business smoothly if this business owner is placed in detention, even if this person is not removed eventually. But if there is a pause in the operations of the business, that's something else that we are telling people.
Wow. Very good.
Yeah, I have so much admiration for you, Anna. You had mentioned pro bono, and one of the things about pro bono that people don't understand, it's on your own time. It's really the word volunteering to help our community lift voices. And one question I have is, Gabriela had mentioned technical fields and STEM, and being an attorney, it is a technical profession. It really is. And we have a lot of admiration that you went through law school because it's a discipline. And speaking of discipline, one of the things that we need more than ever is to maintain nuestras becas, our scholarships. And in your pro bono work, are there any students, college students that you mentor, that you work with currently that are DACA?
Actually, yes. As you share a little bit about my story, I came here when I was 14 from Guatemala. I didn't speak a word of English. It was actually very difficult. I held 2, 3 jobs while putting myself through high school, college, and eventually law school. And I am in the position that I am today because of others that mentor me. So for me, mentoring younger students is very important. There is this amazing organization called Latino Justice that's actually looking for Latino attorneys that are willing to mentor younger students, and it's crucial, right? And I do have a few mentees that are DACA recipients, and of course they're afraid. There's a lot of uncertainty, but my role is to educate them not only with whatever is happening with immigration, but also providing them with guidance on how to get where they want to be. Because pursuing a career in law, especially as a first generation Latino student, it's not easy. I think I was reading the statistics. I think about 2% of attorneys are Latina attorneys. So it's a very small number, which goes back to how crucial it is to mentor students. So if any Latino attorneys are listening to this, please look into Latino Justice and sign up to be a mentor.
Oh, that's wonderful. And DACA is, I know, and I live in Florida, and it's interesting because the three of us, it's wonderful to see, for young generations to see us. So hopefully they'll listen to this podcast that we're all immigrants, and well, we were, our parents, I came when I was 6, also didn't speak a lick of English. And, Frank was born here from immigrant parents. And
But
it's just,
I'm practically an immigrant
but you're
because I
an
was born
immigrant.
30 miles
And
from the border.
so
30
you're
miles. So
pretty
my
much
my
there,
kids,
right?
my daughters always say you're barely American.
You're
So
barely.
so barely. But one thing I wanted to mention is you're absolutely right, Gabriela and Anna. We're covering what I like to say the most important coast, the East Coast of New York, Florida, and California. And I think the three of us together really could amplify the resource of what we have to bridge. And the more resources that we provide our community, the better off we are because, we're only a month in, and yeah, just barely a month in, and things are going to get difficult. And one thing we have to do as a community is what we call the midterm. The midterm, just like in college, that's the most important piece of this administration. In 2 years, we got to get our community to vote, and we have to really voice, our concern during these podcasts because otherwise, the more people listen, the better understanding folks are going to have, both in English and in Spanish.
Right. And it's to really educate. I think that I've just learned 2 key points, from Anna's discussion with regards to having, the consulates and then the power of attorney, things that you sort of take for granted, but make total sense. And oftentimes people out of fear don't even know where to go, even those that may be as intellectual, very educated, but the system and navigating some of those things, especially in these times and we can't address the importance of how entrepreneurship is so critical to wealth building in the Hispanic market. Is an incredible pillar. And Anna and I had a side conversation on this, and she brought up a good point. And when we really think about sort of 3 factors, right? So you're a business owner, you've got labor force issues, but then you also have customers that may not
Yeah.
necessarily be visiting your restaurant, maybe they're not going to your dry cleaner, maybe they're not going to your events. Sponsorship dollars are sort of fleeing. That's critical. You've got these businesses that they need to sustain themselves, and this is really having a huge impact on their bottom line.
Yeah, one of the things about entrepreneurship is we have to focus also on building an ecosystem during these times. And what I mean by ecosystem is, angel investors or venture capitalists have to really, really support one another in our community because, unfortunately, diversity, equity, and inclusion, folks are afraid to say those words, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Instead, they take a shortcut and they mention cutting out DEI. Well, the reality is that diversity will never go away. We're never going to go away. And in fact, we're going to grow in numbers, but growing in numbers and in entrepreneurship, we have to move from the single digits to the double digits in terms of investing, in terms of, um, we talk about so much about the GDP, right? Our contribution. Of course, we're contributing to this engine of America, but I am tired of the focus of contribution. It's time to, es tiempo to invest. The investment power is what moves the needle to the right.
It does, yeah.
Y quería preguntar una cosa, Ana, if you could share your journey, before we finish off our session today, your journey from Guatemala in Spanish, because I think it's important in Spanish and in English because it's important for our audience to know about you.
Wow. Mi mamá vino a los Estados Unidos cuando teníamos 5 añitos y nos dejó con familiares en Guatemala y no fue posible traernos hasta que teníamos 14. Entonces pasamos toda nuestra niñez sin nuestra mamá. Al venir acá, como les estaba comentando, no hablábamos ni una palabra de inglés, entonces fue muy difícil entrar a high school sin saber inglés, no teníamos amigos. Lo bueno es de que mi mamá era un poco estricta, entonces nos puso en clases de inglés, estuvimos trabajando after school, poco a poco fuimos aprendiendo, luego aplicamos a la universidad y las dos fuimos a Syracuse University. Y luego, eventualmente, las dos también fuimos a Law School. Ella se quedó en Syracuse Law y yo fui a Cardoso. Y como les contaba, fue una experiencia muy, muy difícil porque no teníamos las herramientas económicas, ¿verdad? Entonces, ambas, 2, 3 trabajos. Pero gracias por el mentorship de otras personas, como otros abogados latinos, que vieron en mí esa pasión y vieron en mí ese talento, me proveyeron con guidance and love, que fue lo que me ayudó para llegar a donde estoy, que ahora trabajo en la firma más grande del mundo de inmigración. O sea, yo entro a mi trabajo cada mañana y le doy gracias a Dios y al universo porque es un sueño hecho realidad. Es algo increíble.
And platform, it's just, it's amazing. We could talk about that later, but yeah, it's all about immigrant moms. I think we'd like to also, and because you were that student, right? And when we think of also from an employee perspective, we have a well of brilliant talent, right? That is also coming from Latin America, and that a lot of employers, including Hispanic businesses, are trying to tap into. Can we end also, like Frank was saying, your story, and how do you link it to that, to those, future Latin Americans that can work here and thrive and also, earn the American dream?
So in terms of the talent, there is a huge need for talent within the STEM industry. We don't really have the talent, so it's very difficult to find employees that can work in these research institutions and IT institutions. So employers do rely heavily on work visas, so which is important for them to stay educated and on top of the different immigration changes that are currently happening. For example, we see H-1Bs that are heavily tapped when it comes to IT. Also, the national interest waiver, which is given to people in the science industry that are developing technologies that are helping the economy or helping the United States as a whole. The large organizations and even small organizations are looking for foreign talent, especially with people in Latin America. So what I tell people in Latin America that want to come to the US and work using their degrees is to look for organizations that have branches in both the US and Latin America, and then apply to work at the entity in their country first, especially for at least a year, and then look to transfer, because it's more difficult to apply directly from Latin America to work into the US. So that will be my guidance for someone that wants to come to the US and use their degree.
So what
That's
would be
excellent.
your last what would you like to leave the audience with if there was una frase, puede ser en español porque a veces uno se emociona más cuando habla en su idioma. What would you like to say to the audience in one sentence?
En lo fuerte que somos los latinos. Venimos de una historia de guerreros, de personas que han salido adelante en todo sentido de la palabra. Y recordarse de nuestra historia y de nuestras raíces.
That's excellent.
Yes, yes.
As you can see, right here, there's a dragon behind me, and my favorite icon of all time is Bruce Lee, and he always mentioned that a difficult life is needed for one person to succeed. And so, you know, what you just said is perfect because through adversity as Latinos, we overcome, and we are the most tenacious group in the world.
We
So
are.
we want to thank you. And before we end off, Gabriela, thank you for hosting. And I want to ask you, is there any way folks could get a hold of you, or what's the best way folks could get a hold of you, either through your firm or pro bono? Or the pro bono group, I should say, that you're part of.
Well, for myself, people can look me up online. Ana
Okay.
Gabriela Urizar. Tengo una página de Instagram que se llama Ana Gabriela Urizar ESQ de Esquire, y ahí pongo información acerca de los cambios que están pasando en inmigración y mis recomendaciones para las personas que me ven.
Perfect.
Perfecto.
And
Gabriela,
we'll put that in our we'll put that, and we'll put it both in the Spotify and YouTube, and once it's uploaded. And we're going to start ending our sessions always by saying es tiempo to cultivate meaningful growth together.
And it's tiempo for the semilla to grow the
To
next
grow
generation of
and
leaders.
continue. Yes, and we're very proud of you, Ana. It's like, you know, we need the next gen like you to thrive and give back. And I think Frank and I, you know, being in sort of the same generation, that's what we're trying to do with our platforms because our people need us. So it's wonderful.
Anna, maybe next time we'll have your sister, you know, side to side.
Yeah.
You guys are twins. But
I agree. That will be
much.
fun. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. Happy President's Day.
You.
Bye-bye.
Happy President's Day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.